Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Amal Saim. I'm an assistant professor at the Institute of Islamic Economics and Finance, Marmara University. And it is our great pleasure to welcome you today to the important lecture titled Reclaiming the Future, the Revolutionary Vision of Third Generation Islamic Economics, delivered by our esteemed guest, Professor Asad Zaman. Welcome amongst us. Today we are privileged to hear from a scholar whose work inspires a rethinking of traditional economic structures, offering a bold vision for the future. Professor Zaman insights will guide us in exploring the next generation of Islamic economics and its potential to reshape global economic systems. We look forward to a stimulating and enriching discussion. Before starting, I would like to present Professor Zaman in few words. These few words would never do you justice or explain your important contribution to the field. Professor Asad Zaman is a distinguished scholar in Islamic economics with a bachelor in mathematics from MIT and a PhD in economics from Stanford University. He has taught at several prestigious institutions, including the University of Pennsylvania, Columbia University, and Johns Hopkins University. Professor Zaman has held significant leadership roles, including heading the International Institute of Islamic Economics at the International Islamic University, Islamabad, and serving as Vice Chancellor of the Pakistan Institute of Development Economics. His work focuses on integrating Islamic principles into economics, advocating for equity and social welfare. Also, Professor Zaman has authored numerous influential works advocating for a shift from conventional economic paradigms toward a more just, inclusive, and faith-aligned approach. His current role at Akhuat University further enhances his commitment to integrating ethical principles into economics with a focus on poverty alleviation and social welfare. Professor Zaman is renowned for his thought leadership promoting Islamic economic systems as a means to address contemporary challenges of inequality and injustice. Without any further ado, please, Professor, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much.
The mic is yours.
Thank you very much. I'm very happy to be here. And so it is a pleasure to be in Turkey, which is my second home. And this lecture, I've been working for about 25 years now in trying to develop a new approach to Islamic economics. And I'm planning to write up a book on this very soon. And so I'm trying to make sure the books are not useful unless there are people who are ready to teach them. So I'm trying to explain what this new approach is and how it differs from the conventional approach, and that's what my goal is in this lecture. So, the first generation was basically, if one of the things that I'm going to explain here is that societies evolve and change in time. And as the societies evolve and change, theories develop together with this change. So one cannot understand any theory about society unless you understand the historical environment and the context in which it was born. So first generation Islamic economics was born in the period when Islamic societies all over the world were getting liberated from Western influence. So in the early 20th century, about 90% of the world was either directly colonized or under controlling influence of European powers. World War I and World War II broke the strength of Europe, and this allowed the freedom movements all over the world to succeed. Now, freedom always requires an ideology to drive it. People are not willing to give up their lives for just for anything. They need a reason, a higher vision to sacrifice. So first generation Islamic economics made the claim that there is a capitalist system, a secular, there is a communist system, there is a socialist system. These are all European systems, but we have an Islamic system. And the Islamic system is superior to all of these systems. And you can find many books in this first generation which argues at the system level. So this is the story in 1950s after the World War II. But from 1950 to 1975, there was lots of political Islam, and it didn't succeed to bring revolution. So then the second generation said, let's convert capitalist economy to Islamic economy. So make adjustments to it. Instead of the revolutionary approach of the first generation was that we will get rid of capitalism economic system, we will create our own system. So that was radical and revolutionary. Revolutions didn't succeed anywhere. So then the second generation said, let's compromise and let's try to adjust. It was a sensible, pragmatic approach, but that also did not succeed. And so for that reason, the third generation attempts to go back to the revolutionary insights of the first. So this is a rough characterization, and I will provide more details. So I've already said that. Okay, so what is a society? A society is a collection of people with a common ideology, common vision, shared ideas. If everybody has its own different beliefs, then it's not a society, it's a collection of individuals. So in Islamic society is defined in the Quran that the Ummah is like one body. If any part feels pains, then the whole body feels pain. So there is the foundation, the ethos, the principles of society are that of cooperation, generosity, social responsibility, and striving for success in the Akhirah. In contrast to this, secular societies emerged in the West after the rejection of Christianity. So after they rejected Christianity, then they said, well, there is no God, there is no judgment day, no Akhirah. So this universe created itself, and so through evolution, man came into existence. So man is just another kind of animal. So the society is a jungle of competition, and there is only one rule in the jungle: survival of the fittest. So the organization of the society, instead of cooperation, it's competition. Instead of generosity, it's greed. Everyone for himself. Individualism instead of social responsibility. If other people are starving, I'm rich, I will go and spend my money in the luxuries and instead of giving to the poor. And hedonism, success, search for pleasure, the fundamental axiom on which all of modern economics is built, is that rational behavior involves maximization of pleasure in this dunya. It has nothing to do with Islam. In fact, it's, I hate to say it, it's kufr. But the reason I hate to say it is because all over the Islamic world, Muslim teachers are teaching this to Muslim students. So it's a little bit problematic. So I'm going to go deeper into this surface analysis. What happened in Europe was that during the 16th to the 18th century, there was a great transformation. Social theory was based on the Bible. This is called the scholastic approach. But what happened was that there were centuries of religious wars. And so people said, quite correctly, that society cannot be built on religious foundations. But they should have said it can be built on Christianity, because Islam is different. But so they said, okay, so we have to reject religion and build a secular society. Secular society is one in which you don't have religion. I mean, religion is a private matter. So the first step in building a secular society is to build epistemology, theory of knowledge, because the scholastics, they had a theory of knowledge. They were starting with the Bible and a Christian intellectual tradition which was very well developed. So they said, okay, we abandon everything. and we start from zero. So if you start from zero, then you have to create an epistemology, a theory of knowledge. How do we know something is true, something is false? So they said, okay, we will use two principles, observations and logic. And there was a reason for this. They said that religion is what is causing warfare. People are very committed to dogmatic religious beliefs, and different people have different beliefs, and there's no way to resolve this. So what we need to do is to build a knowledge on which we will have consensus. Everybody agrees that this is true. So the way to do this is to use observations and logic. And so that was the Enlightenment Epistemology. And on this ground, all of Western knowledge has been built. And what I will show is this ground is not sound. So, as I said, social theory evolves. And this is the fundamental message, that they had social theory built on the Bible, and they had religious wars. Religious war led them to reject religion as a basis for building society, and then they built a new basis. And the new basis is the social science we have today. Actually, this is not true. Social science, what we have today, emerged in the early 20th century after the two world wars. The two world wars convinced them that the approach that they had taken to building social science up till now, that was also wrong. And so they rebuilt social science on new foundations in the 1930s. So modern economics, the scarcity definition, emerged in the 1930s with Lionel Robbins. And it's a very radical break from even their own tradition. So, and it's wrong. So, now this is what happened in Europe. Now the thing is that they also colonized the globe. And one of the aspects of colonizing the globe is that there were few conquerors and a large number of ruled populations. So in such a situation, it is essential, physical power by itself is not enough. You have to have soft power, you have to colonize the minds. This is very important because it's not very well understood. But conquest cannot be maintained until you train the populations which are under the rule to accept their colonization. So that's why this project all over the world going on is decolonization of minds. Because even though the colonizers are gone, in the 50s, nearly most of the globe got decolonized except for a few small places. And so nominal political freedom was achieved all over the Islamic world, but mental freedom has not been achieved yet. So the educational system indoctrinates people into believing that the West is the most advanced civilization, and capitalism is the best economic system. And one of the goals of the capitalist education is to produce human resources. Human resources are standardized parts which fit into the capitalist machine for the production of wealth. So every individuality is taken out of people, and they are not taught how to be human beings. So in this process, the development of secular thought, there were some fundamental epistemological errors, and critical to understand is that observations and logic are not enough to arrive at the truth. And Imam al-Ghazali already noted this many centuries ago. Through observations and logic, if you want to think about society, if you want to develop social theory, then you must add metaphysical assumptions and you must add moral assumptions. Without that, you cannot develop knowledge. Now, the secular thinkers, the Enlightenment thinkers, were caught in a trap. They were caught in a bind. They could not express explicitly metaphysical and moral principles, because metaphysical principles and moral principles go outside. Metaphysical means outside the physical world. So, for example, the question, who created the universe? This is a metaphysical question. Why? Because it asks about what happened before the universe was there. So before the universe was there, nobody was there, we cannot see it, it's not observable, and there's no way to use logic to find out what happened before the universe was created. So within the Western secular epistemology, there is no possible answer. So what the secular thinkers did was they said that these questions are out of bounds of knowledge. We will not include them in knowledge. But the problem is that when you do that, you give an answer, but the answer is concealed. So what the secular knowledge does is says there is no God, but it doesn't say that explicitly. It's concealed, hidden in the framework. Just like, when in economics theory they say rational behavior involves maximization of utility. There's no mention of God here, but what you are saying is that I reject God. This is a moral assumption and a metaphysical assumption. So the issue is that secular modernity, which is embodied in economics and in political science and in social science generally, is based on concealed metaphysical and moral assumptions. And I have already explained that there is a reason. There is a problem here. This mistake is so obvious, so easy to prove, that you have to think, how can somebody who has a brain make such a big mistake? Especially when you know that these people are very smart. They have built nuclear bombs and sent a rocket to the moon and so many other things. So they're not stupid people. So when you say that they made fundamental errors, you have to ask, why did they do that? So there is an answer. It's a psychological trauma. The centuries of religious wars were very severe trauma. 1/3 of Europe was devastated. All of these Enlightenment intellectuals were personally affected by this religious persecution. Many of them were on the list of heretics. They had to flee countries and so on. So they were watching the effects of religion. So they had a personal animosity towards it. And that's why they were able to make such a big blunder. So what are the consequences of this fundamental blunder on which 300 years of knowledge has been built, including all of modern economics? The fact is that, you see, if they had openly expressed, if economics say that there is no God, there is no life after death, and because of that, we have to be intelligent and we have to maximize our pleasure, this is a perfectly sensible argument, and we can accept it or reject it. But if you say that this is rational without mentioning any metaphysics, then this is a deceptive argument. And this deception has taken in all of the second generation. So there are so many second generation Islamic economists. You can find many articles arguing that utility theory is acceptable to Islam. Because even though when utility theory itself was proposed by Jeremy Bentham, he said that I am doing this because I reject Christianity. And once I reject Christianity, then what is going to be the basis of good and evil? So he said, what is good is what gives me pleasure, and what is evil is what gives me pain. So this was explicitly built as a religion to counter Christianity, utility theory. And economics theory is part of this religion of seeking of pleasure. And so it is against Islam, but unfortunately. So this hiding of metaphysics and morality, this was done for explicit purpose. Remember that the secular societies were going to be built on a knowledge which is equally acceptable to all religious people, because the goal was to end religious wars. But it cannot be done, it's impossible, because you cannot build knowledge without metaphysics. But they didn't know that, or at least they didn't say that. And so this leads to the second major consequence for us. They claim that our social science is valid for the whole world, because it's built on objective facts which are true for everybody. This is not true. What is social science? Social science is a set of lessons extracted from the study of historical experience of human societies. But which human societies? European societies because that's all they had. So the idea that European societies' experience can be applied to the whole world, this is false. But it is claimed to be true, and we Muslims are accepting this, and we are teaching Western social science in all our universities, not just economics, because they made this claim and we didn't investigate. So the idea is there are many other people who have said the same thing in Western intellectual tradition. One of them is Timothy Mitchell. He says the possibility of social science is based on taking the experiences of the West as a template for a universal knowledge. So can it be done? He says, no, it can't be done. The experience of the West are different from the experience of Africa. Even today, economic theory, if you study textbooks of international trade theory, it will make no mention about how trade, all countries are treated the same. So whether you're talking about trade between Pakistan and India, or trade between Africa and Latin America, or trade between Brazil and Sudan, or trade between the European Union, it's all the same. The theory works the same because it's supposed to be a universal theory, but it is not true. This is not how trade works. The trade between US and China is different from the trade between US and Mexico. So, but this is concealed. The word science itself refers to the idea that we can study societies by making up universal law. Now, if you have a law of physics like the law of gravity, then there is no sense in saying the law of gravity in Pakistan and the law of gravity in England. It's the same because it's the law of gravity. But if you ask about the trade theory of England is different, trade theory of Pakistan is different, and trade theory in 19th century is different, and trade theory in 20th century is different. But
I'm sorry, trade theory or trade policy?
Trade theory. Even the theory is different. I'm talking about theories, not policies. Okay, we will inshallah give more specific examples. And okay, so here are the 5 fundamental metaphysical questions which must be answered. Yes or no? You cannot get by without answering them. Why was the universe created? Well, so I'm going to consider only 2 possibilities, although there are many others. But the 2 mainstream, the one that is embodied in secular social science is built on the assumption that there is no meaning to the creation. There was no creator. And the Islamic position is that the universe was created by God. There are other possibilities, but just to keep things simple, let's just look at these 2 extreme opposite options. One is that there is no creator, and the other is that there is creator of God. So then there is a question of what is the position of man. So the position of man in Islamic view is that man is Khalifa of this planet, and he was created he is Ashraful Makhluqat, and he was created for a specific purpose. The position of the Western social science is that universe was created by itself, so man was created by evolution, so man is an animal, just like any other animal. So that leads to the third question, what is the code of conduct for us? So Islam tells us that there is a whole set of akhlaqiyat, that this is good behavior, this is bad behavior. And the code of conduct as taught in economics is that everyone is out for their own pleasure. This is a world of cutthroat competition. If I get the chance, I will cut your throat. If you get the chance, you can cut my throat. And this is the jungle we live in. And survival of the fittest is the rule. If I survive, then I have succeeded. Power is what drives the world. Might makes right. What is the best form for a human society? Well, we already explained that human society is like a jungle in the Western conception, and it's like ummah, one body, in the Islamic conception. What is the nature of knowledge? The root of all of these questions is, how do we know something? How do I know if X is true or if X is false? Everything is built, all social science built on epistemology. So there is an answer. The Western epistemology says that a statement is true if you can prove it using observations and logic. And Islamic epistemology has its own complex answer to this question. Recep Şentürk is the most expert on this matter of epistemology. But roughly we can say that the Quran is 100% true, we know, and then we build upon that. There is and when we build, there is a possibility of error. We can make mistakes, but in interpretation also. So, these are all metaphysical questions because they themselves cannot be answered by observation and logic. Especially you start with epistemology. How do we know if something is true or false? This is knowledge, but this knowledge itself cannot be arrived at by observations and logic. Because observations can also be defective and logic can also be defective, and this has been established. So how do we know the answer to what the truth is? There are many answers in the West, but none of them are correct. I mean, Kant made the most sophisticated effort, but his also efforts are wrong. There are some fundamental problems with his approach. So I think I've already covered this Islamic social science versus Western social science. I covered the answers to these questions, so we'll go over this. So now let's look at what happens in Western metaphysics. What are the consequences? Okay, so we have our lives are meaningless, and meaning is given by purpose. So what is the purpose of human existence? There is no purpose, because the universe itself was created by a random accident. We were also created by a random accident, and we will die by a random accident. And so whatever you do, it's all the same. There is no higher purpose, there are no visions. So, in default of the purpose, then the purpose becomes the same as that of animals, seeking pleasure. This is the utility theory. And that's what's embodied in economics. Modern economics says that this is the purpose of life. They teach us purpose. Your purpose is to maximize pleasure you get from consumption of goods and services. This is the basic. Now this fails, this idea fails on both empirical and normative grounds. Empirically, it's not true that people all over the world, whether they're Muslims or not, they don't seek to maximize pleasure. There is a reason for that, which we will discuss later. Also, as a normative principle, it is false. Even if you are an atheist, even if there is no God, you should not try to maximize pleasure from goods and services, because actually, this is Richard Easterlin, who was my colleague in University of Pennsylvania, and he was developing these theories. He said that the fundamental axiom on which all of economics is built is that more wealth is better. So ever since Adam Smith wrote The Wealth of Nations, and today all over the world, the ministries of finance, they say that our goal is to maximize GNP per capita, which is wealth. So is this a good thing to do? Does wealth, his paper was called Does Money Buy Happiness? So he investigated in many different ways, and in all ways the result was that there is zero correlation. Money does not buy happiness. And so it's very easy to understand. Money buys happiness in the short run. In the short run, if I drink chai, it will make me happy. If I am very hot and somebody gives me a cold drink of Coca-Cola, I will be very happy. But long run happiness depends on completely different factors. What does long run happiness depend on? There has been research, and it says it depends on character and on social relationships. Loving and being loved. These are the things which make people happy in the long run. Money only buys short run happiness. Okay, so there is no morality in conventional economics. So one of the demonstrations of this occurs in game theory, where we study what is called sub-game perfect equilibrium. So in games you have branches of trees. If you make a contract at some point, and later on you get to a place where you can get better outcomes by breaking the contract, then according to economic theory, you should. Because the goal is to maximize utility and contracts don't mean anything because promises, this morality is meaningless. So there is something in economics called cheap talk. If two people, the classical example is prisoner's dilemma in game theory, where if both people cooperate, they can both get out of jail. But if one of them betrays the other, he gets a big reward for betrayal and the other person goes to jail for 10 years. So the personal interest I have is to betray the other one because I'll get a good deal. But if we both cooperate, we both get out of jail and it's better for both of us. So what happens is both people are greedy, both people betray the other side, both people go to jail, which is worse for both of them. And this is what utility maximization does. So according to economics, that is rational behavior. But actually humans do not behave like this because they have this feeling of morality. So all the experimental evidence shows that cheap talk matters. If you and I agree that okay, we are not going to betray each other, according to economic theory, this talk has no effect on outcome of the end. But in real life, this talk makes a huge difference because people do honor contracts, even though economists think they don't. So there is a life in the jungle. This has much more implication for political theory. So I'll explain. And there is a problem which arises because the Western epistemology says that our theories are built on facts and logic, so they can't be wrong. So we have arrived at the absolute truth. This is the truth. Everyone should believe it. This is one of the reasons. So, but they did this by a trick. They hid metaphysics and morality into these, and so these things which they believe to be true are not true. And so this throughout has been a problem. Robert Lucas in 2004 in his presidential address to American Economics Association said very confidently that we have solved the biggest problem in economics, which is the prevention of recessions. And 2007, he was proven wrong. The solo testimony, after the 2007, there was a congressional committee that met to explain the failure of economics as a scientific theory. They said we provide lots of funding to economics, but the economics failed. And then if you look at the committee report, it starts by saying that it's not just that economists failed to predict. More than that, there were people who were coming to the Congress and testifying that there's something wrong, very wrong going on in the mortgage market and we should look into it. And the economists said confidently, no, there's nothing wrong, no problem will happen, just like Lucas, because our theories of rational expectation, everybody thinks that things are going good, and so if the expectations are rational, then things cannot collapse because the expectations are rational. There's a book called 7 Schools of Macroeconomic Thought. All 7 of those schools have models of economic theory, none of which could predict the global financial crisis. Not one of them. Because all of them are based on rationality and equilibrium and maximization. None of these phenomena hold in the real world. And as I said before this seminar, in agent-based models one can get around this, but in modern standard economic modeling you cannot. The models are built on these equilibrium and optimization ideas. So basically, economic theory itself says that I am a science, just like physics. And law of demand and supply is just like the law of gravity. But this is false. There is no, this is just epistemological arrogance, as opposed to epistemological humility, which Islam teaches us. Our biggest muftis used to say after giving a fatwa that this is according to my opinion, which is weak. And if you get better information, somebody finds an error, please do not follow my opinion. So there is an alternative to social science. I'm saying all of social science is built on wrong metaphysics and wrong morality. And so we have to develop social science starting from zero. just like Western social science itself was developed starting from zero. They rejected the scholastic school, which was built on Christianity, and they said we must start from zero. Today we have to say that this 300 years of effort on building social science is the theory of how you build a secular society, how you build a society without religion. And this includes economics, politics, all of the social sciences. And so maybe there is something valuable you can take from it, but our own foundation, there is one approach which is the second generation. We take this tree which they have built up and we make some trimmings in it. We cut some branches and we plant some. We say no, the root is the problem. So we build our own science and we can borrow. We can take anything that is useful from there and attach it to our tree, but we cannot build on the roots because the roots are poisoned. The metaphysics and the morality is wrong. So I have sketched some ideas about how we can develop Ulumul Umran. Ulumul Umran, you could translate it into English as urban science because Umran refers to basically urban cities, but that would give the wrong impression because it would say that this is a branch of Western social science where there is something called urban science. There are many different kinds of urban science. So we want to indicate that we are starting from new roots, so it's better to go back to Ibn Khaldun. And the ideas, both the methodology, ontology, epistemology, all of these are different, and so it's better to use a different name. And this is not my name, other people also have suggested. So, critical to this Ulumul Imran is the idea that societies are a continuous process of change. They are young, they grow, and they grow old, and they die. So, societies are continuously evolving. Theories about the society are co-evolving together with, and they must. There's no option. As society changes, the theory of a society must change because society is changing. So now the goal of Ulumul Umran is to study the factors which drive social change. There are a couple of important implications. First of all, for conventional economics, there is no equilibrium because society is changing, theories are changing. And for epistemology, the standard view in West is that economic theories are evolving towards truth. That is, old theories are bad theories, and as we go through time, we get more information and get better theories. This is not true. Mercantilism was ideally adopted to its own time. It was a theory which said that we should collect gold because that was a time when wars were continuous among European countries and they needed gold to finance the wars. So the mercantilism was correctly focused on the acquisition of gold. But after a while, this acquisition of gold changed and the emphasis became on trade, especially through the process of imperialism and colonization. So in the 19th century, the theories changed to make trade and to reject mercantilism. And similarly, Keynesian economic theory developed because of the Great Depression, and it cannot be understood without the Great Depression. So, change is not towards more truth. The change is towards, as societies evolve, theories change because societies are changing. Social theories are always local. Time, place, geography, society specific. So if I develop a theory, and as I said, Islamic economics is also a local theory. First generation was due to the factors that existed in the 50s and 60s. Second generation came out because of the experience of the failure of political Islam. If political Islam had succeeded, we would not have second generation. We would have a different kind. And similarly, third generation is the result of the failure of the second generation. After 30 years, there is not a single innovation, not a single innovative idea that has been produced by the second generation economics. And in that period of 30 years, lots and lots of new ideas have been created by environmentalists, by chaos theorists, by post-Keynesians, by this complexity theories. 7 or 8 different schools of thought have emerged. All of them have some interesting and valuable things to contribute. But second generation Islamic economics has been going on for 30 years and it has not produced a single valuable idea. So So theories are local and they are never universal. So this word science, it says that this theory is valid across time and place without restriction. This is not true. Every theory is about a particular society at a particular time. So some of the critical factors in terms of ulum al-umran, study of social change. So when Ibn Khaldun was theorizing, he talked about asabiya. But today we don't have this, asabiya is not the driver. But the same thing is true. The classes, cohesion, people who identify with each other, who have common visions, these are the critical insight is that only groups drive social change because societies consist of groups. One individual cannot create change unless he gets other people to share his vision and to work collectively. So societies only change by collective action. And collective action is only possible by some common agreements on some goals. So this is one factor. The other factor which is very important to understand in ulum al-umran is that the social change is driven by the human beings themselves. You see, societies change, people develop theories to understand this change and to manage it, because the theory is what you use to drive policy. So Keynes developed a theory for the depression, and this theory was used to conduct policy until the 70s. And there were some other processes going on as well. So how the society changed from the World War II to 1970s was governed by Keynesian theory and by the domination, the widespread acceptance of Keynesian theory. So the process of social change is partly driven by external factors like geography, etc., technology, many other factors, but also partly driven by humans trying to understand and control and manage this change using theories. So the process of social change depends both on the society and on the human attempts to understand this change. So social change generates theories, theories generates policies, policies generate social change. So it's an entangled process. Both of them are mixed up in each other. And so you have to understand both how societies are changing and how thinking about societies is changing in a corresponding fashion. So this is makes things more complicated. And one thing to understand is that in terms of difference with conventional social science, in conventional social science, human beings are robots. They don't their actions don't play a role. Even Marx, he said that we have material determinism. So the history is locked into a pattern, and that's why you have science. Just like human beings are particles, just like electrons and molecules, and they are driven by laws. So we study the laws of behavior and we can predict mathematically how the society will evolve over time. So if human beings are thinking and they are free to choose and they can choose one theory or the other theory, then they can drive the process of social change. And so you can't study it like a science, and you cannot write down an equation for it either. Because you can write an equation for how the sun moves and how the stars move, but you can't write an equation for how you are going to move, because you are free, you can change. If I say, here is my equation, and you look at it and you say, oh, you're predicting that I'm going to have Jazariya in the evening, but I will just make fast today. So then my prediction will be wrong. Any prediction I write down, you can make wrong because you are free. On the other hand, if you are a robot, I can write down the prediction and you cannot change what I will do. So, alright, so now I'm going to describe the models. So classical economics is based on equilibrium and optimization. It's almost literally copied from 19th century physics. Mirovsky has written a book on how close the correspondence is between the development of classical economic theory and the physics, because everybody was very impressed by Newton's laws and they wanted to develop economics in that way. Now, in physics they moved away from that because they found that this doesn't work, equilibrium. So they have built dynamic systems. And in dynamic systems you can have many kinds of phenomena. You can have crisis, you can have collapse, you have failure of equilibrium, and so on. And so people are working on economics using dynamic models, including a book which has been published in Turkey recently using dynamical models. And I think one of the heterodox economists, Steve Keen, he has written a book, and he has developed a method for dynamical models. And this is a big improvement over classical economics, because it allows the system to change and evolve over time, and it can also have crises, which the classical equilibrium models can't have crises because you have equilibrium. So dynamic is much improved, and in fact that's what Steve Keen is selling his models on, that my models can predict the global financial crisis. None of the conventional economic models, which are in use in monetary policy committees all over the world, even after the global financial crisis, where it was proved that these models don't work, but they have no alternative, they don't have different models. So the dynamic model is a second step, but it's not good because it doesn't include the human freedom to choose and to change. So that is where the agent-based models come in. That actually models the economy agent by agent, person by person. Actually, we have the computing power to now put in every single person in Turkey into a model and make some model of the behavior. But normally we don't do that. You put in some classes of people, there are traders and there are consumers and there are old people and young people and so on. You can put in any number of different types of agents. All of them have their own thoughts and behaviors. And then you ask the computer to. So my son runs a computer graphics firm, and he models human walking, just one person walking. So there is no equation which describes the walk. You have to build a very complex set of simulation software, and then you can predict how the person will walk. Basically, you map certain critical junctions in the body, and then you can correlate them. Just like that, the economy is a very complex system. You can't write an equation for it, and this is one of the biggest problems with new classical mathematics. They try to write equations for things for which equations cannot be written. And so, what we can do is do simulation. This option was not open at the time that this theory was being developed. So tomorrow I have a talk on agent-based models. Right. So I'm going to just illustrate some of these ideas for how we will do social science. So, as I already explained, 16th to the 18th century, there was a period of continuous European wars that led to mercantilism. 19th century was global colonization, trade, and peace in Europe. And so in a peaceful society within Europe, trade becomes more important than wars. And that is the Adam Smith theory. Then World War I destroyed this whole paradigm and collapsed the gold standard. And with the collapse of the gold standard, the autarky resulted. You could not have international trade because you cannot have international trade with fiat currencies. If the currency is not backed by gold, if I use dollars to buy Turkish goods, the standard procedure is that the dollars represent gold. If the dollars do not represent gold, then the mechanism for trade becomes complicated. So once you have autarky, then if there is no benefits from trade, then you can get resources you need by war, and that was basically the cause of World War II. And then that led to the Bretton Woods, which was actually an attempt by USA to gain the position that UK had abandoned, world leadership, and they did this very subtly by using the dollar standard. And so basically the dollar standard, especially with Nixon shock in 1971 when the gold backing was abandoned, basically the US is now in a position unique in the world of printing dollars, and their government deficits are financed by treasuries all over the world. This is an extremely unfair system, but this is how so what I want to say from this is not about justice. I want to say that the theory of monetary policy is different in each of these periods. And if you don't understand how the monetary standard has evolved, these are all markers where monetary theory changed. Monetary theory in 19th century up to World War I is different. The interwar period has a different monetary theory. Post Bretton Woods, the theory is different up till 1971. Post 1971, that is the era when modern monetary theory now comes into effect. Modern monetary theory, which has been developed, it's a minority view and does not command much consensus, but this is the right theory post 1971. And then in the 1990s, there were developments in shadow banking, which led to further changes. In 1999, there was a repeal of Glass-Steagall Act, which basically allowed shadow bankers to expand hugely, and then that led to very risky finance, and that led to the global financial crisis, and that led to a crisis in economic theory. All of the major economists said that this macro does not work. Krugman said that we were misled. The beauty of mathematics misled us. We mistook the beauty of mathematics for truth. So even he admitted that the mathematics is very pretty, but it is not true. So I've already discussed the evolutions of Islamic economics. The first generation was part of the freedom struggle. The second generation, one of the things that I didn't mention is that why did the freedom struggles not succeed? This is very important to understand, because what happened was that education was used to colonize the minds in the colonial time, and it created a class which was, it has many names, brown on the outside and white in the inside, the coconut class, the traitor class, or there are other names for this. But this is a class of people who had awe and admiration for the West and hatred and contempt for their own culture, their own society, their own heritage, their own religion. So this class was in power because they were placed into the rulership position by the British explicitly, because they were supposed to govern the masses on their behalf. The British themselves could not communicate with the masses. So after the independence, this class came into power and they didn't allow revolutions to succeed elsewhere. Turkey has its own unique trajectory, which I will not discuss. So the ruling classes continued the colonial education system for colonizing the mind. So today all over the Islamic world, people are still having colonized mind. They still believe that West is the latest society, the most advanced civilization the planet has ever seen, and their knowledge is just rocket science and there is nothing better than that. And so this fact led to the birth of political Islam. They said, okay, the first generation, we have to implement Islamic system. Second generation, it's not possible to implement Islamic system. We have to capture the government. Without the government, we cannot implement the Islamic system. So they tried and tried and tried, and they failed for various reasons, which I will discuss briefly. So then the second generation said that, okay, and you can date it to basically the Mecca conference of the first international conference on Islamic economics in Mecca, which I think occurred in 1976 or sometime. So that you can say is the birth point of second generation. So they said, okay, forget about this revolution. Let's try to see if we can convert capitalism to Islam. So, these people read, the first generation didn't pay much attention to modern economics. They said it's all wrong. And they said, they talk about scarcity as the fundamental principle. I read in the Quran that there is fadlullah. So there is no scarcity. So the second generation said that, okay, since we are going to modify capital, we should know what it is. So all of them, most of them got PhDs in conventional economics, and they were brainwashed into believing it. modern economics. So they said, no, of course, the scarcity is a fact of life. You can't reject it. So the first generation was wrong, and they reinterpreted the Quran to match modernism. So I've already explained this. So in critical areas of conflict, like utility theory, like scarcity, like a critical area of the firm, is that they say it's profit maximization. But in Islamic theory, a natural theory would be that the firm tries to maximize its service. And profits are incidental. The firm tries to make profits to survive, to make sure that it continues to provide service. You can make that argument. But so profits are necessary for survival, but it's not the goal. In contrast, in the Western firm, service is not the goal. The firm provides services, but the service is to make profits. And this change in orientation and intention makes a huge difference in terms of the behavior of these firms. And it's not. This is not just theoretical. There are many firms which exist today in this model, and they are actually trying to do this. And there are firms which say that we have a dual bottom line. We try to maintain profits at a certain level, but we also try to make sure that we are providing service. So this is the right transition strategy. So the second generation, unfortunately, one of the things they did was they were, because of their shock and awe of the West, they accepted without question everything written in the textbooks. So they said, oh, we have to, they use math, so we must use math. They use quantitative methodology, we must use methodology, and so on. So the global financial crisis led to a crisis in economic thought, just like the Great Depression, which could not be predicted by any economic theory at that time, led Keynes to formulate a new theory. So after 2007 also, none of the conventional schools of macro can predict crisis, so actually Steve Keen has become much more popular in the sense that his theories his dynamical system can predict crisis, and there are other schools of thought as well. So this also, since second generation had tied its boats to conventional economics, when the conventional economics sank, also the prestige of the second generation sank, and people started to think again that how can we do economics differently. So the third generation was born around that time, post 2007, and many people around the world started thinking about how we can do a more genuine Islamic economics. So the critical basis for third generation is that we recognize that both the second generation and conventional economics are based on the wrong metaphysics and the wrong morality. And so once we recognize this, we say, okay, we have our own metaphysics and morality. We don't have to develop it from zero. It's 1,000 years of intellectual tradition has given us a strong metaphysical foundation and a strong philosophical moral foundation. And all of these things are available, and not only that, but modern Islamic intellectuals are developing these ideas. So the foundations are there. We don't have to start from zero, unlike the secular modernity did 3 centuries ago. So we have a purpose for the creation. So this universe was created as a testing ground. So what is rational behavior? We recognize this test. We recognize the ayatullah in ourselves and in external reality. And so this recognition of Allah Ta'ala leads us to love Allah Ta'ala, to hope for His mercy, to fear from His punishment, and to obey His orders. In all dimensions of our individual lives and in our social lives, we must strive to fulfill the orders of Allah. So this is the definition of third generation Islamic economics. What is the purpose of Islamic economics? It's to fulfill the orders of Allah in our individual lives and in our social lives. So this is different from second generation. So just as an illustration, the main financial institution of capitalist society is the bank, because the main driver of society is accumulation of wealth at the individual level and at the social level. In Islamic society, the main driver is generosity, the opposite, and the idea that you should spend of that what you love so that you earn the reward of the akhirah. So Allah Ta'ala says, "Lan tanalul birra hatta tunfaqu mimma tuhibbun." So you spend of that which you love. So by spending what we love, so the institutional form of that is the waqf, the exact opposite of the bank. This is just an illustration.
But we have the Waqf Bank.
Yes. So the purpose of man is defined in the Quran, and Allah Ta'ala wants to see who is the best indeed. And the goal of our life, man has the potential. I'm now trying to express it in a language which will be communicable to non-Muslims as well, because when we want to engage in a battle on the intellectual grounds, which I want to do, then we have to speak in neutral terms, in non-specifically Islamic terms. So man has enormous potential. This is what the Quran tells us. This argument, these ideas can be placed in secular language, although I will use Islamic language for this purpose. But so Allah Ta'ala says, لَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ فِي أَحْسَنِ تَقْوِيمٍ ثُمَّ رَدَدْنَاهُ أَسْفَلَ سَافِلِينَ. What this means is that inside the man is the potential to rise higher than the angels, so that the angels make sajda, or to be worse than the beasts. So the goal of life, not to maximize wealth, to build up the potential, just like the seed has the potential to become a tree, so inside the man there is a potential to become a human being or a human resource. So how can we become human beings? So for that, the path is to do the good deeds. The best of the deeds is the training ground which leads us to become the best human being. So morality is defined by Islam, Deen al-Fitra. And again, in secular terms, the pure heart can distinguish between good and evil. But by doing bad deeds, the heart becomes black and becomes unable to distinguish. That's why tazkiyah is a critical requirement to be able to understand what is good and what is bad. So once you do that, then the Sharia law is the external counterpart and the heart is the corresponding internal judge, and both of them are guides to the truth. In the secular society, they said that the internal compass, the heart, is useless because it leads to religious conflicts, so we will only have external compass. Only the rule of law will be the guide for morality. That means that the society creates morality. So I've already discussed these ideas, okay. So the nature of knowledge. The useful knowledge enters the heart, enables the ma'rifah of Allah, and shows us the path to paradise. Knowledge is the most precious gift of God, and it is what made the Malaika made sajda after Adam alayhi salam learned the names. So useful knowledge, there is a distinction in Islam between useful knowledge and useless knowledge. Prophet ﷺ made the dua, Allahumma inni as'aluka ilman nafi'un, or Allahumma inni a'udhu bika min ilmin la yanfa'. So there is a distinction. This distinction doesn't exist in Western epistemology. There is no, because useful and useless is with regard to a purpose. If you have a purpose, then knowledge is useful to achieving that purpose, and useless knowledge prevents us from getting that goal. But if there is no goal, then all knowledge is equally useful and useless. So okay, so coming to the end of this talk, these are some basic differences between what an Islamic approach to economics would look like. So critical to understand to this new methodology is that since economics cannot be a science, it is the study of society, and societies are continuously changing, so our economic theory must also be continuously changing and adapting. There is some discussion, actually I discussed this earlier also in the other seminar, that Islam itself is thought of as a set of universal principles. Sharia is universally applicable for all times. So there is a delicacy. There are some universal principles. The one metaphor is to think that the Sharia tells us the goal, where we have to go. It gives us the ideal society. Now, how we get there changes depending on your position. So the Sharia tells us you have to do Hajj. For Hajj you have to get to Kaaba. It doesn't tell us what is the path from Rome to Kaaba. It doesn't tell us what is the path from Morocco to Kaaba. And doesn't tell us how to get from Brazil to Kaaba. And doesn't tell us how to do this in the 20th century, 19th century. So these things, while we have the goal, the path we take towards the goal is dependent on our local circumstances. So the Sharia is the same because the goal is the same, but still it is changing at every time because as our societies evolve and change, the path we need to get to the truth will also change. So just like the Prophet ﷺ, he is the goal for all of us. He is the model of excellence. We know that none of us will ever get there. He is just too excellent. But so now what path should I take to be like our Prophet ﷺ? Well, I have to analyze my character. What are my defects? What are my strengths? Also what I can do. Maybe I have a very big problem, but I am very weak and I can't fix that. So I look at those things which I can fix. Take one step towards Allah and Allah Ta'ala will take many steps towards you. So this is the thing, that you look at your weaknesses, and this is what the Sufia and the Mashayikh used to do very well. They had a very good understanding of human psychology, and so I will discuss this. So there are two common mistakes in the attempt to develop social science. One is that we already have social science. We have 1,000 years of developed intellectual tradition, so we just take that and apply it. That isn't right, because societies have evolved and changed beyond what was. And also, the other opposite mistake is to think that Western social science is universally applicable, so we don't need to reinvent the wheel. This is something which is commonly said. They have already invented the wheel, the social science, so we just need to apply it, adapt it to our society. So both of these are mistakes. Their social science, even if you think of theory of money, you think of the Basel regulations, these have evolved and changed. As the banking system changes, the rules for the banking system change. And so also the Sharia itself kept evolving and changing over time, and you can document this in many ways. So similarly, unfortunately, what happened after the colonization was that this process stopped. For various reasons, the Sharia got frozen in time 3 centuries ago. So today we have 3 centuries of catch-up to do. 3 centuries of evolution and change where the fiqh stopped evolving. And so people are starting to do that. It's not that. And so this process is ongoing. Many people are working on how to adapt fiqh to modern times. The bigger problem is not how to adapt. It's the convincing the scholars to open up their books and to look at modern societies and to see how the Sharia can be adapted. So basically, knowledge is today and has always been the central battleground. When the Quran came, the world was in darkness and ignorance, Jahiliyyah. And the Quran said, "Allama al-insana ma lam ya'lam." It starts with Iqra, the first one. So Allah Ta'ala gave to mankind knowledge which they didn't have, and that was the real enlightenment of mankind. That that knowledge produced a revolution in history. That's acknowledged by everybody, Western scholars as well as Islamic scholars. Now the only difference between Western scholars and Islamic scholars, Western scholars say that Quran was very powerful message for its time, but now it's obsolete. So Muslims, we cannot believe that. So we have to say that the Quran message is still as fresh and as revolutionary today. It has something to say. This is the mistake of the second generation. The second generation thinks that Quran has nothing to offer us in terms of revolution. It can make minor modifications. The main body of economics has already been developed by the West, by Samuelson, and now the Quran can say, okay, in fact this formula has often been written in books that Islamic economics is equal to capitalism plus zakat minus interest. So this is foolish, but some very major scholars have said that. So basically the Quran teaches us how to build society, and society is multidimensional. All dimensions have to be done at the same time. The economic, politics, social institutions, educational institutions, everything works together. So basically, as I said already at the beginning, Islamic societies are built on generosity, cooperation, social responsibility, and striving for success in the Akhirah. And the capitalist societies are built on the opposite principles of greed, competition, individualism, and hedonism. So there is a pragmatic approach. How can we build an Islamic society today? So this is the critical way in which third generation differs from the first generation. First generation, let's first capture the government, and then we will build an Islamic society. We say that, okay, governments cannot be captured. The hegemonic system is so strong. This is a pragmatic decision. If we could capture the government, we would do so, and that would be wonderful, and then the task would be easy. But we say that Islam, you start from where you are, do what you can with what resources you have. So the question is to look at what is open to us if the government is not in our hands. So there are many things that are open. Once you understand that capitalism is built on excess consumption, excess production, excess labor. So one of the things we need to do is to reduce. If we reduce our lives to simple lifestyles, we don't need to labor as much, we don't need as much money, and we don't need as much consumption. That frees up our life to do other things. Now in my society in Pakistan, I've seen this, and I'm sure the same is true in Turkey. When I was a child, we had half day, our parents would go out, our parents, not our parents, our fathers would go out, earn to their jobs, come back after Zohar, and then the evenings were spent socializing. We would go and visit family, and the families would come in. There was nothing else to do. Today, everybody works. The father works, the mother works, and even the children work. So there is no social life. Why? Because capitalism has trapped us all into producing. I mean, we live very luxurious lifestyles. Supposedly these are making us happy. But the Eastern paradox says that no, happiness does not come from high life standard. It comes from having friends. And this is something which is intuitively obvious to everybody. So if we lived simple lives, just eat plain ekmek, paneer, and not much, nothing else. But we have lots of friends, we love each other, we have... So this is the better life. Instead of living in huge castles and having the most modern dishwashers and laundry and not having any friends. So, what I'm saying is the third generation is saying that, okay, let's be pragmatic. We cannot have the government because there's too much power. So, you have to do guerrilla warfare. Guerrilla warfare means that you look at what the weak areas are in capitalism and you try to you do things which are not closely guarded. And there are many things once you realize that we don't need. So that's okay. So, اللهم أرنا حق حقا وارزقنا اتباعه وأرنا باطلا باطلا وارزقنا اجتنابه سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون والسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين.
Thank you so much, Professor Zawad, for sharing your valuable insights. It was indeed an enlightening lecture. Thank you so much. Now we open the floor for questions. Please feel free to ask. We start with colleagues and friends here with us in the room, and then we move to the questions in the. So we don't have any questions till now on YouTube, so please feel free to ask.
First of all, it's our honor and pleasure to have you here. It's nice to see you here. Actually, I want to ask about epistemological foundation. I think that we have epistemological foundations in Islamic law, but maybe it's not like I don't know, but not a theory or not like I don't know. It's not exactly.
It's not
What
a
do you think?
structured
Yeah.
knowledge.
What do you think about that?
Well, you see, my approach is very pragmatic in the sense that I'm trying to do, you see, on that question, Recep Şentürk is the right person. He has been developing a very sophisticated theory of ontology, epistemology, metaphysics, etc. Multiplexity. It's very deep, very powerful. But I noticed that the students that we are teaching Western economics, my goal is to replace Western economics, indoctrinate students into the wrong metaphysics and the wrong morality without ever mentioning these two words. So one approach which has been taken by many people around the globe is the following. Say, okay, look at this Western theory. Let's extract the hidden metaphysics and the hidden morality, and then we look at the philosophical basis for this, and so we study Kant and Heidegger and Hegel, which led to this metaphysics, and we explain why this is wrong, and this has been done by a lot of people. But when I tried this approach on students, I lost everybody, and I said that okay, this will take many years to teach them Western philosophy, and it can't be done. So I said, okay, let's do the battle in the trenches. They teach morality and metaphysics without talking about it, so I can also do the same. I don't have to do heavy epistemology, I don't even have to mention the word. The Quran doesn't mention epistemology and metaphysics, but it teaches all of these things.
When we mention, sorry for having the word, but usually when we mention the word, students freak out.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, so
exactly.
I try not to mention that word.
Exactly.
because
So if you are in class,
We have ilm and ma'rifa, which is more deeper than
exactly. So the scholars have extracted the metaphysics and morality from the Quran, but in the trenches, when you are in the classroom and teaching, you can't use this intellectual approach. So I haven't been writing, I used to write articles for intellectuals for academia. I've stopped doing that. I'm now writing articles and I'm trying to develop books which don't do the epistemology. It's very difficult because the argument is metaphysical and moral, but you can do it without talking about it.
Maybe the fourth generation inshallah.
And question.
Yeah, this.
Okay.
Thank you very much. It was very insightful. First of all, you said that I'm really interested in the action about making some action about this third generation understanding. It really had impacted me very much. So you mentioned that we shall have small battles and maybe incremental achievements and then eventually achieving this. But do you believe that is there a need for a systematical or more organized approach to achieve this goal, because we are all bounded by the system, as you mentioned, even in Turkey, all the capital systems, even our mindsets are working with this system. So I think it is really hard to achieve with small incremental upgrades. I think there needs to be a very radical change. I don't know how, but maybe there should be a systematic or organized approach.
Actually, this is a very important question and very fundamental question, especially because there is a group of Muslims, a very large group, which says that we can't achieve change until we have the Khilafah or the nation. So without implementing the Sharia, nothing can be done. So this is, I think, the wrong view. Suppose that you believe that. I don't believe that, but suppose that you believe that we must capture the nation state first. So first of all, there is the Wa'il-Allah argument, the impossible state, which says that the nation state is inherently incompatible with Islam. I don't agree with that. I think that it is possible to modify, but the argument is fundamentally sound. But I think there is hope. But forget about that. What I'm saying is that what I believe is in action. Islam, you see, is based not on outcomes, but on effort. So suppose I believe that I want to capture the state. Okay, I say, all right. So that will take 50 years, right? Okay, so now chart out your plan. What's going to happen in the first year? What's going to happen in the second year? And then at the end of the first year, make sure that you are one step closer to the goal. Then you have done what you could do. Now the problem is, like in Pakistan, we have this Islamic, it's different to our Turkish story, it's very different, very complex. But Pakistani story is different. So we have Islamic Jamaat, and they have been trying for 70 years to capture the government. And today the number of votes they get is less than what they used to get previously. So if the effort is failing, then you're not making progress towards your goal. You should rethink what we are trying to do. But there is another aspect which is to this, which is that Allah Ta'ala doesn't ask us for outcomes. Whether you are Shaheed or Ghazi, it doesn't matter. So there is a metaphor which is very useful in understanding this. And the metaphor is something called isometric exercise. In isometric exercise, I get up and I push against the wall. And if I push very hard and I keep doing this, trying to move the wall, my arms will become strong. This is easy to understand. So now there are two mistakes that you can make in this exercise. One is when you push against the wall, you say, okay, the wall, I'm trying to push the wall. You're given instruction, your physical education exercises. Okay, try to push the wall very hard and try to move the wall. So you push the wall, and see the wall is not moving. You say, oh, useless, the wall doesn't move. So that mistake, so if we try to make effort to achieve change in the society, and that's what we want to create an Islamic society, and we don't see the outcome, we are looking in the wrong place. It's not the wall that's going to move, it's the muscles. So if we try to make effort for social change, look at your heart. Has it achieved more tazkiyah? Has it achieved closeness to Allah? Has the sacrifice that you have made, have your dua become stronger and more powerful? Even the frustration of the effort of not being able to move, oh Allah Ta'ala, I did everything I could and I couldn't achieve any change. And if this comes from the heart, you will achieve closeness to Allah. And that is the outcome, that's the desired thing. So if the person is looking at the wall, he's not looking in the right place, he'll look at the muscles. So the other mistake people make is that, oh, we know that the wall is not supposed to move. I know that this is just a pretend exercise. Yani, Allah Ta'ala is not looking. So instead of pushing the wall with all my might, I just touch the wall and see I'm doing the action because I know the wall is not going to move. So again, the muscle doesn't develop. So if you make token efforts, this is what I see the Islamic Jamaat doing. That they say, okay, Allah Ta'ala rewards us for our actions. So we are trying to get the government, and we'll never get it.
Satisfaction.
Yeah?
Sadece konuşuyoruz satisfaction.
Yeah, exactly. We will never get it, but Allah will reward us for our efforts. That's stupid. You have to make effort. You make real efforts, then you will get reward. You're not token efforts. So these are the two mistakes that are common.
Okay, any more questions?
Yes, first of all, Ustaz, thanks for your presentation. I would like to ask about your experiences about the second generation of Islamic economics. Actually, I guess that you have known much more better than me personally as well.
Yes.
But I guess that, and I think that actually some of the experiences that you made are really so homogeneous to, let me say, which is insufficient to explain the differences among them actually. Suppose, let me give an example. They just, we can say, taken all the things that Samuelson, or let me say, other neoclassical economists actually asserted. But many of them actually criticize them, and many of them faced with them. Even I can give some examples regarding, for example, the studies of Muhammad Ömer Chapra, or even Naqvi, or other, many others like Necdetullah Siddiqui. So can we make such a generalized stance regarding them?
Okay, very good question. First, let me transpose the question. When I criticize neoclassical economics, people say exactly this, that modern economics, it contains a huge variety of thought. There are people who are talking about environment, people who are talking justice, people who are talking about emotions, people who are talking about building society with love, people who are talking about all sorts of Islamic things. So why are you criticizing? So I look at what is happening. You see, the thing which is on the ground reality is how are we training our youth? That is happening in the universities. So I say, okay, all of these ideas are floating, very good ideas. But what is on the ground reality? What is being taught in the textbooks that you see to the students? So if the idea is there, then I accept. Now, if you look at all the textbooks throughout the world, Islamic, in conventional economics, then you find that they are teaching Samuelson, nothing else. So all of these heterodox ideas, they are in the air, but they have no ground presence. Similarly, in the second generation, there are lots of good ideas, but what is the ground reality? Just a few years ago, there were two textbooks published, one by IIUI and one by IIUM. Two textbooks, and they all say some good things about Islam, but in practice, they don't offer any solution. If a student reads through this book, he will get some confusing ideas, but he will not know what to do. Now the modern economics textbook, it tells you what you have to do. And it tells you clearly, it tells you something wrong, but anyway, it has a specific. Now this textbook, it teaches the modern economics, then there is some errors in it, and Islam says this. At the end of the day, after you reading that textbook, you get nothing. So when you talk about ground reality, the second generation has achieved nothing. No.
So when you say the second generation, can you give me some name? For example, Ahmed el-Najjar is the second generation. Ahmed el-Najjar from Egypt.
Ahmed al-Najjar.
So
I haven't seen his work, so I don't know.
Egyptian.
Yeah, I know. I've heard the name, but I haven't seen his.
He basically had one book, not a lot of publications, but most of them in Arabic, so maybe that's why people could not access to his work.
Yeah, I'm talking about the battle which is being fought on the ground for the minds and hearts of our youth. So if a person is present in that, and his books are being taught, then that's something worth looking at. If the book is not being taught, then it's just in the air. How do we translate that into a lesson which is going into the hearts and minds of our students. That is the real battle.
Also, I think there is a disconnection between the different groups of researchers because each one is writing in his own language. Like we have the Anglo-Saxon group writing and reading in English. We have Turkish people writing and reading and lecturing in Turkish. We have Arab people exclusively writing and speaking and lecturing in Arabic. So, and no one knows the language of the other. Maybe the only common language is English.
Yes.
So that's why the English written references has reached out, but the rest of the references are still hidden somewhere. We have, for example, in Turkey there is like a tremendous amount of references here. Not only from the modern era, but also from the Ottoman period. But nobody is accessing this data because nobody knows that language and nobody translated these references or these books from the Ottoman language, or what they call Osmanlıca, to English, for example. Or even from the modern era Turkish, the standardized Turkish language to English or to Arabic or maybe even to French. So that's, I think, another common problem to standardize the knowledge in Islamic economics field.
Yes, I think that I would say, I make two comments. Everything you say is correct. First is that today I think the central problem is of facing the Ummah as a whole is shock and awe of the West and their accomplishments. And obviously if you look at what they have done in the physical sciences, it's hard to avoid being impressed. I mean, their technology and science has shaped the world and shapes our lives from minute to minute. I have a mobile in my pocket and I'm doing a PowerPoint presentation and so on. So does that, but this is the physical sciences. I'm saying that first we have to differentiate. The social science, it is like a chameleon. It is camouflaged. The word science camouflaged. Whereas the physical science is obvious success and amazing success, social science is an equally amazing failure. We have continuous wars, climate catastrophe, breakup of family in the West. Nowadays, more than 50% of the children born in the West are to single mothers, which means that most of them don't see the love of father and mother in a comfortable and secure home. So how can even a sound human personality develop in such an environment? Now the thing is that instead of looking, because of our shock and awe, we think that the social science is just like the physical science, and so social science teaches us how to run the government, how to build educational institutions, how to run banks, how to have other institutions of society, how to do justice, everything. So in every dimension of society, we are trying to follow the West, guidance of the West instead of the guidance of the Quran. And that's the first problem, biggest problem. So now this we are doing because what is the tool which indoctrinates students? That is the Western education. If you study for 4 years in a program where only the intellectual contribution of Western scholars is taught to you, then automatically you assume that the Quran and the intellectual tradition of Islam is completely irrelevant for modern life. And 4 years of training, you never saw it mentioned. This is the 90%. Now, in your department and in some other people, they are making some patches, some contributions. But students are also pragmatic. This is, I'm relating my experience as the director of the International Institute of Islamic Economics. The students there, the institute was meant to design, purpose was to teach Arabic and Sharia on the one hand and modern economics on the other hand. So the hope was that by integrating these two knowledges, we will get a superior outcome. But this didn't happen. The reason is that the goal of the education was to get the students jobs. And the students understood that, and they realized that learning Arabic and learning Sharia and Fiqh will not help us into getting jobs. And so instead of acquiring respect for Islam, they acquired disrespect for Islamic teachings as a result of this education. So the ground reality is what matters, what is being taught. So if you are writing in Arabic, I don't mind, but is that writing being taught in Arabic schools? As far as I know, in the universities all around the globe, there is the same syllabus, because all the universities, the best jobs, the one with the highest amount of money, are in corporations which are Western and capitalistics. So everybody thinks, because we are trained into believing this is the goal of our life, to make the maximum amount of money. And so once you have, and this is what the education teaches us to do, we are trying to build human resources here, not human beings.
If you got the money, you got everything.
Yes, once you have money, you have everything. This is the one of the central principles of capitalism, because with money you can buy and sell people, labor market. So if you can buy and sell people, then you can buy and sell everything. So money is automatically going to be the goal of life. So once money is the goal of life, then the capitalist education is the best. No one is going to study Sharia and Fiqh and law. They won't get a job. That's why Islamic finance is so popular, because that gets you fairly good paying jobs. Because Islamic finance itself is a second generation project. It says, let's adapt the Sharia to do what Western banks do. Instead of, so there is two different things. There is Sharia compliant and Sharia conforming. So Sharia conformant bank says, compliant bank says that, okay, you want to make money, just don't do it in halal, haram ways, do it in halal way. Now the Sharia conforming says, do you want to make money in the first place? What should we do if you have a lot of money? You have a question coming up in the final judgment. What did you do? How did you earn your money and how did you spend it? So will you, if you make a lot of money, if you look at the lives of the Sahaba, they didn't want to make a lot of money. So because they will have more questions to answer. So you can make money. Islam does not prohibit the making of money, but it does place constraints on it. It doesn't like harum.
Making money for which purpose?
Yeah, exactly. What is the purpose? You want to do something with that money that is valuable, that is providing hizmat to the ummah, then go ahead and make money. Allah Ta'ala will give you the money that you need if you make the intentions of it. But the usual process is, first let me get $1 million and then I will do hizmat to the ummah. And actually that's exactly what happened.
You won't be able to do that.
There is a story of the Prophet ﷺ. One man came to him and said that, "O Prophet, I am very poor, give me a flock of sheep so that I can make zakat." He said, "Are you giving zakat now?" He said, "I don't have any money, I am too poor." So he warned him against, but he kept asking, so he said, okay. He made dua for him and he got lots of sheep, but he never gave zakat. So this is the thing.
I'd like to pass the mic to Miss over there.
Walaikum assalam.
I just want to clarify a point about, you mentioned that our fiqh, our Sharia, has been frozen in time, that's the phrase you used, for 3 centuries, you said. So would the development of Islamic economics be I think it's a part of Sharia, right? So,
Yes.
So you're saying that we have to develop this, fiqh's development will be like the same as the Islamic economics development, and how much time do you think it will take us, just from like your observations?
300 years?
No, definitely not. I think that basically Muslims have not been focused and you have been on doing this, and one of the reasons is that, well, there are many reasons, but I think that if you focus on developing fiqh, this can be done fairly rapidly. We have we are not in the position of the Enlightenment intellectuals of Europe, where they had to start from scratch, from zero. So we have a huge amount of material. It's just a question of adapting it for use in modern times. Now the problem is that the people who are supposed to do the adaptation are not familiar with modern society. So that is something which I'm familiar with in Pakistan, also in Al-Azhar. They sort of withdrew to the walls of the madrasa. They didn't look outside, so they don't know what's going on. And so unless you know the Surat al-Mu'amala, you cannot make judgment on it. And but I think that if we focus on trying to do this, it should not take very long, because we have a very strong intellectual, and it's not that nobody is doing it. Lots of people are aware of this problem, and lots of people are trying to take steps to solve it and partial solution. But to explain a bit more clearly what I mean is that I was Vice Chancellor in PIDE, and we had a course on business ethics. So I said, well, business ethics, this is at the heart of Islam, and so we should be teaching it in Islamic manner. So I called a person and said, this is the person, he is the most pious person, he teaches Islamic University. And so I called him and said, okay, so how are you going to teach this course? I want you to teach this course at my university in the Islamic way. So he produced his outline. So it was all Western texts. I said, Islam has nothing to say about business ethics. He said, I have a lecture on it. And he showed me that there is this lecture. And I said, okay, so Islamic ethics is a supplement branch of Western ethics. West doesn't know anything about ethics, but we are following Western ethics in business. And actually, if you look explicitly, why did the theory of corporate social responsibility arise? It arose when the business was following very strongly Friedman's doctrine that the corporations don't have any ethical responsibility, and as a result they got a very black name throughout the world. People were saying these corporations are evil and they are doing a lot of damage, and they said, okay, so we have to do damage control and we will promote our image, so we will do $1,000 of charity and we will do $10,000 of advertising based on this. So the goal of corporate social responsibility is not social responsibility, it's to improve profits. So there's a hadith that a man will come and say, oh, Allah Ta'ala, I spent all money for your sake. Allah Ta'ala says, no, you spent it for your fame, and so you can go to Jannah. So this is what they're doing.
Maybe the reason that we study just a solution for a case, not as a total, not as epistemological and philosophical foundations. I think we study there's a problem and there's a solution, case to case.
Yeah, but those are the cases that are written in the books of Imam Abu Hanifa. What about the bioethics? Today, Pakistan bioethics field is dominated by secular thought, and our fuqaha need some training in medicine to be able to have dialogue with these secular people. They don't have that training. So why did the criteria for death change from the stopping of the heart to brain death? So there is some medical theory which is involved. Lots of things arise, and lots of secular principles of bioethics are wrong. For example, if somebody is in a terminal disease, the bioethics people say you should tell the person that you are going to die. Now, in Islamic ethics, they say no, you should give him hope. Prophet ﷺ, and we don't know. I mean, the medical science does not have enough certainty to be able to predict death. And so lots of miracles, and my own brother, the doctor predicted that he will not live until tomorrow, and he lived for 40 years after that, and that happened 3 times to him. So, that was what showed me, and he personally experienced that medical science is not as strong. I used to believe, I said when the doctor said, and my elders told me that make dua, I laughed. I said, what do you mean? The doctor said he's going to die tomorrow. What's the meaning of making dua? But later I realized that they were right and I was wrong. Allah was stronger than the doctors. So this is the thing.
Any more questions?
Okay. There is no question. We need this one.
Yes.
Okay. I think Dr. Esad Zaman to study, to develop the Islamic economics because generally people study Islamic finance because money is there.
Yeah.
Even if in our institute, most of the dissertation, I don't know the rate, but maybe 80-90% related to Islamic finance, not the Islamic economics. It's really difficult to develop the Islamic economics model. But here, I think like we have, as the ML said, we have some language barrier. What's mean the language barrier? Like in Egypt, Ahmet El-Neccar, he set up the Midgam Civic Bank.
He set up the Midgam.
Yeah,
Oh wow, that is a very, very good.
This is
the first Islamic bank, and it was a very good actual Islamic model.
Yeah, this is the real Islamic bank.
But Ahmed al-Najjar is still alive.
No. He passed away
I
years
see.
ago.
You mentioned some other al-Najjar.
No, it's the same Najjar. Ahmed al-Najjar.
Ahmed al-Najjar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought you said that he was here.
No.
No.
But he visited Turkey in 1960s or 70s.
No, that's another one.
Yeah, but the interesting things like no one, like only a few people study this bank, and this is the real Islamic bank.
Yes, that's
And the other example is like in Turkey, we have the Professor Dr. Necmettin Erbakan, also he is passed away, and he developed, his colleague, they developed together, just economic order. Okay, this is maybe a simple model, but when they apply to this model, when they get power in the government, they apply to this model, we have the zero budget deficit. As you see, this is they succeed somehow, this one. But still, if you look at it, there are too many people, they say that we are follower of the Professor Dr. Necmettin Erbakan, but they never study this economic order. This is there. So we have maybe like the local solution, like this bank and these things, but we don't study this one. Here is maybe like the question, I mean, in finance, we have Islamic finance, we have some success because there is an application.
Yes.
In Islamic economics, we have to develop a model as a whole, or we have to study step by step. For example, how should be the budget in the Islamic economy?
This is a very good
balance
question.
budget. Or how should be international trade? Because Al-Shatibi has the theory for this, the international trade in Islamic economics.
Yes.
I mean, we have to do this as a whole or step by step because, you know, to study as a whole is the big things. I don't know, the life of the one person is maybe not enough for it.
Yes. So I have
to study by step is the right way.
Yes, definitely. I have yes. This is a very important question. What should we be doing? So actually, that's what I'm trying to say. That in the third generation, the critical thing is that we are not waiting for the Khalifa, and we are not waiting for Imam Mahdi to come, and we are not waiting for capturing the government before we start doing. So this is the question: what should we be doing now, today, with what we have and available resources, and given the large amount of hostile forces, so we have to take into account the opposition and their strength. This is actually a battle. That's what I have said. This is a battle for knowledge, and knowledge is power. So if we try to transform knowledge, we will meet with resistance. So we have to look at the resistance and where it is going to come from and how we can counter it. So in terms of priorities, I think that the core effort should be on the educational system. So that's what I'm working on, because this is training millions of minds. So that's why when I look at theories, you're talking about the Arabic literature, I'm asking the question, how much of this has impacted on the education in taking place currently in Islamic society. If it is not impacted, currently it's at zero. So what I want to do is to take those ideas and translate them into something which can be taught in schools if it can be done. And now not everything can be taught in schools. As I said, the standard methodology which has been in use in Islamic universities all over the world today. On the one hand we teach the Western subject, on the other hand we teach the Islamic Sharia. Now the question is, if you are preparing the student for a job in capitalism, this is not going to work. Because ultimately, if we say that I have an Islamic economic system, it's very big, very beautiful system, but I'm going to train you to become part of the capitalist system, then the Islamic system can't even give you ECMEC. So then it's useless. So an education system should provide, and this is what I'm in Hooth University, what we are trying to do. First of all, there was an economics department, I shut it down. I said this economics can't be done Islamically. What we are going to teach is entrepreneurship, but not MBA style entrepreneurship, indigenous entrepreneurship. So we don't want people to be job seekers, because job seekers are going to be participating in capitalism. We want them to run their own businesses and preferably to develop their own ecosystems, grow their own food, develop their own energy, learn how to do solar cells, and we want them to be all-rounders. We don't want them to specialize. We want them to be able to fix cars and basically, basically our graduates, they get their degree and then they sit around and wait for jobs and apply, and if they don't get jobs, then they are a burden on society, because that's their expectation. The education system produces the expectation that after we get the degree, we will get a job. That are looking. Now, capitalism creates a certain fixed number of jobs. So no matter how you train them, if there are more job seekers and fewer jobs, they're going to be unemployed, and this is going to generate social resistance. So we want to teach students that Allah Ta'ala is, there is no scarcity. There is Fazlullah. With 1 acre of land, you can grow enough food to feed 10 families. Even if you don't have 1 acre, you can rent 1 acre of land and you can grow food. So don't sit down and don't cripple yourself. Don't be a part of capitalism. So this is one of the things that you can do.
So it's based on local communities.
Yeah, local
Creating our own
local
village.
communities, yes. Local communities, exactly. So what I say is that of all of these theories, the Arabic theory and the Turkish theory, ultimately I said that it should translate into education. But not everybody. My message, the textbook, this is addressed to the academia alone, because I think this is the core. But not everybody, I'm not going to ask everybody to become a professor, no. Only those who are naturally adapted. Other people are in other sectors of society. All of them can have, there are things they can do. Everybody is in some sphere of society and they have a circle of influence, and that's exactly the message of the hadith, that kullukum rayun. So everyone has a sphere of influence and you're responsible for that sphere. So you take care of that sphere. So as an educator, I am responsible for a certain sphere, and I think this is a very important sphere for Islamic society. But I'm not going to ask everybody to become a professor. But those people who are students and who are studying, I say, okay, I encourage you to, if you are inclined for this, become an educator. But if you're not, then run your own business, develop your own enterprise, be independent of capitalism to the extent possible. Even now, the system of capitalism is so strong and so powerful that I don't expect that 100% of the students. So I will also prepare them for jobs. That okay, if you have to do a job, but there are ways that you can do a job which will be more Islamic than others.
Any more questions? No? Thank you. So thank you again, and as a gesture of our appreciation, the Vice Director of our institute, Professor Dr. Shakir Durmush, will present you a token of appreciation. It's a gift.
Professor, for the presentation. This is a small gift from the